Here is my review of the final episode of Obi-Wan Season 1. All right, it's all led up to this, and let's find out if this makes or breaks the season. And for me, this was kind of a mixed bag. I'm going to talk about what I really liked and what I had an issue with. Now, luckily, this is one of the more even-keeled episodes of the season. And so I did think that this episode overall did put it into the I like the season category. It was not one that pulled me in the other direction, which was good. And this episode should have been aptly titled The Force Unleashed. And if you've seen the episode, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's talk about this particular episode. So this is where this has all been leading up. Now, I will tell you that Reva is still on a mission to go kill Luke. That's one of the side storylines in this final episode, and I really felt like this was tacked on. It was annoying to have to switch to that storyline every time they needed to go to it. I felt like the last episode should have been the last we saw of Reva in this series. Sure, she needed her redemption, but I think that could have come in a future season and didn't have to be particularly right now. I thought the whole thing on Tatooine was just unnecessary, except for Obi-Wan going back at the end. But we also had Vader trailing, this transport with all of these Jedi and people that were trying to get away from the Empire. And Obi-Wan realizes he's got to lure Vader away. So he does take a transport vehicle from the ship that they're on, and he heads down to a nearby planet. Now, this was one of the weird things in the episode. The ship the whole time was like flying weird, and it wouldn't be able to fly like that in no gravity. I could understand if that was on a planet surface, but his ship looked really goofy flying away from the Star Destroyer. Now, the Star Destroyer looked really cool. It looked like they used practical effects like they did in the original trilogy, and it looked really neat. But his ship just looked goofy and out of place. I don't know why they decided to do that. Deborah Chow made some very interesting decisions while directing the series, and I hope if they do a season 2, which I hope they do, they get different writers and a different director. And she did an okay job, but definitely not a stellar job, and I still don't like the whole shaky camera thing. She did that during Vader and Obi-Wan's fight quite a bit in this episode. So he trails him down to the planet. Vader goes down there, and we were supposed to get the fight of the century in this episode. Would I call it the fight of the century? Well, I will tell you, I was really nervous after the first part of the fight. Vader definitely gets the upper hand, and I thought that was going to be it. And I was like, okay, if that's it, this show is ruined. And luckily, that wasn't it. There was more to come, but they kept trailing back over to Reva, like I said, which was super annoying. Now, in this episode, we had Obi-Wan trying to communicate with Qui-Gon again, which he hasn't been able to do, but he does end up getting what he needs from the Force to be fully back. And I will tell you, the fight with Vader and him, I'm going to be eager to see this uncut without all the Reva stuff in the background. It was a really good episode. And the fight was really well done. It was probably one of the best Star Wars lightsaber fights we have seen. I just don't like the shaky camera thing. I think it's unneeded. It's out of place. But that is definitely an artistic decision made by Deborah Chow. And then after that, we have kind of a reconciliation of everything that's going on. We had one scene with the Emperor who has a conversation with Vader, and it looks like Vader is finally going to completely cut himself off from wanting to go after Obi-Wan or even caring about him if he's doing what the Emperor tells him to do, which does actually open up the door for more stories with Obi-Wan in the future and him being able to travel around more freely without Vader actually, going after him. And I'm going to talk about what my hopes are for a season 2 and just the storyline going forward with this time frame in the Star Wars universe. But we had Reva having a reckoning, and she realizes she has a new path with the help of Obi-Wan. She does not kill Luke and leaves him there with, the Lars. And Obi-Wan was actually able to meet Luke for the very first time, and he gives him the T-16 Skyhopper, which was pretty cool. And then as he's going off, this is the thing that I thought was the most tacked on thing, was as Obi-Wan is leaving his cave to go find somewhere else to live more freely, he comes across Qui-Gon just sitting there in the desert waiting for him. And to me, it felt like a cop-out. I'm just going to say it. It was tacked on. It was completely unnecessary. I really think how this should have occurred is him in deep meditation and finally meeting up with Qui-Gon, and it should have been a lot more dramatic than him just waiting in the desert. No, hi, Qui-Gon, how are things going? It was out of place. It was goofy. Not the decision I would have made. It should have been a more dramatic, just a much more emotional reunion than what they did in the show. It was like, oh, hey, Obi-Wan's like, hey, how you doing? Like, I've seen Force Ghosts before. This is pretty cool. And for him this is supposedly, Qui-Gon was the first one to supposedly communicate from the other side. This should have been a more dramatic and a more impactful moment. So overall, this episode, I'd give it 4 stars. It is probably the most even-keeled episode of the season. I thought 3 of them were good, really good. One of them was terrible, and the first 2 were just mediocre. So I really did. The first 2 were okay. The third one was really good. I thought the fourth one was just goofy and terrible. And then the last 2 were excellent. So I really did. Overall, I'd give the season 3.5 out of 5 stars. The directing, especially the writers, they have some problems they need to fix going into a season 2. So let's talk about where I'm hoping they're going to go with this in the future. They definitely do leave it open the way it was written, and the dialogue between Leia and Obi-Wan and all of this, everybody who, was in this episode. It was actually everybody was in this episode. So Bail Organa and his family was in it. So all of the dialogue and everything that you see in here could directly lead into the original Star Wars movie, Episode 4. But they do leave the door open for more adventures. And both Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor said they do want to come back. They would love to do a season 2 and possibly more than that. And I'm all up for that. I really do think that going forward, they could pay more money, get some better writers, some better directors, and really make an impactful show. The Inquisitors, my big issue with the overall season is the Inquisitors look like just morons. Like they didn't really do anything in this season except for the very opening sequence in the first episode. I thought that was just a very missed opportunity to show how badass these Inquisitors could be, and I hope we get to see more Inquisitors in the future, and I would love to see Obi-Wan go against some of these Inquisitors. My hope is that he would meet up with this rebellion, the group of Jedi that they're saving, and that they could go out and go on some rescue missions, and, one by one, those Jedi could be killed, because we know that Luke ends up being, Obi-Wan is one of the last Jedi, unless the other one's going to deep hiding. But it would be nice to see them show that side of it, the rebellion side of it, and have some pretty cool lightsaber fights with some of the Inquisitors. There are lots of different areas they could go with the overall storyline going forward, but I want to see a redemption for the Inquisitors. I want to see who they were. So we don't need a whole ton of Vader. I would like to see Vader go out and hunt some of the Jedi. I wish Vader would have his own show, but it would be nice to see Obi-Wan Season 2 kind of deal with the Inquisitors, and that's kind of where I hope this is going to lead in the future. All right, so again, I give the overall season a 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I give this final episode 4 stars. It was actually an excellent episode. I would put it on par with the episode before it. The lightsaber fight was one of the best lightsaber fights we have seen in all of the series, and yeah, it was a good redemption for Obi-Wan. It was nice to see him finally let the Force come back in. Really well done. So nice job by Disney on that. They did redeem it with this final episode, and they did not destroy it like they easily could have. There were some very questionable decisions made during the course of this season, but these last couple of episodes really just brought it all together, so I really enjoyed it. All right, what did you guys think of the finale? Where do you guys hope that this leads? We'll see you guys on future reviews. Take care.